Work on going to your left. That's my son JC and my daughter Jalen, and they're both actually working on or practicing, maybe even just playing on the skateboard. And that's something my wife and I decided to get them involved with, the idea of a physical activity that gets them outside the house, get them away from video games, something that they can do every now and then, and something that they could possibly be safe at doing but also have a lot of fun. However, I never skateboard, so I don't know how to teach them. What we did is we decided to get them involved with the local skate park here and actually get them involved with some lessons. And in doing so, the instructor started explaining to my son that he needed to learn some fundamentals, some basics, the idea of even how to what they call tic-tac, going to your right or going to your left. He also explained to my son and to my daughter that it's through tic-tac that you really start to steer or give yourself direction on the skateboard. This is an important idea if you're going to actually move somewhere. You want to know where your direction is coming from, or more importantly, know how to have direction or give yourself direction. Well, from talking about tic-tacking and going right to left and left to right, we actually had a chance to talk about the idea of just right. My son pointed out the idea that, hey Dad, do you realize that right has so many different meanings? I mean, you can talk about right as in writing something down, or you can talk about right from the standpoint of, like I said, directions, or even the idea of being right. From there, it kind of reminded me of a conversation that we once had when I had to sit down with my son and talk about the idea of being right, or maybe not doing something wrong, being maybe truthful. And from there, we had a chance to look at really how important is it to be right, and is there something more important than right?
Remember when, I think it was about a year ago, when you were drawing and you were tracing a lot of stuff?
Yeah.
And you remember the one time you came home and you were trying to show me something that you drew, or you said, I drew this, it was on a green piece of paper?
Yes.
What was that?
It was Iron Man and Captain America.
That's right. What were you thinking about when you first showed it to me? You told me you did draw it. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Tell me something. What were you thinking when you said, okay, I'm going to tell my daddy I drew this?
I was thinking that you would believe me.
You wanted me to believe you?
Yes.
But was it true?
No.
Well, why do you think it was important for me to believe you did something, even though you didn't do it?
I don't really know about that.
How would it have made you feel if I believed it?
Happy.
Later on, we talked about it, and we talked about the fact that if you tell me you did something and you didn't do it, what's that called?
Lying?
Well, that's what we call it. We call it lying. And we know that lying is probably not what Daddy wants. Let me ask you this. Is that really what you want? Do you want to have to lie to make yourself feel good?
No.
What about God? Sometimes we can think about what God wants. Do you think God wants us to lie so we can feel better about things?
No, not at all.
Why do you think people still lie even though maybe God doesn't want that? What do you think they're thinking about, like when they're lying, right in the middle of the lie? What do you think is going on in their head that they do it anyway?
That they can like get a better chance of doing something that they want to do. Or maybe something like that.
That makes a lot of sense. Sometimes we want something so bad that we forget what God wants. But also sometimes we lie because we want to be right. What do you think is the difference between being right and being righteous?
Being right is when you're like trying to convince or argue with somebody that thinks you're wrong. And righteous is when you do right.
When you
don't say you're right, you're actually doing right.
You're actually doing right. You don't have to try to convince somebody. You know what? I'm very glad about something. You know what it is?
What?
You know the difference between right and righteous. I'm glad about that. You know why?
Why?
Because if you know the difference between right and righteous, I don't have to worry about you making a lot of mistakes. And also, I know that your sister will be okay by watching you as a big brother. I got one more thing to ask you. You think you can draw better than me?
No.